Welcome back to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in Russia in the past 24 hours. The clearest development today is that Ukraine's long-range strike campaign is no longer showing up only as damage at individual industrial sites. It is beginning to move through the wider Russian economy. The Orsk refinery is expected to remain out of service for months after a Ukrainian attack, with some repair estimates running as long as half a year. In the surrounding Orenburg region, fuel shortages have affected roughly 4 out of every 5 filling stations. That is a serious local disruption, but the larger issue is the way refinery losses are pushing up the cost of moving goods across Russia. Fuel prices have risen sharply, freight rates are climbing, and some shipments moving from China to Moscow now cost almost a third more than before. That matters because Russia's geography makes trucking a critical link between rail hubs, warehouses, factories, farms, and consumers. The effect of a damaged refinery can therefore spread far beyond the energy sector. Businesses pay more to move inventory, regional authorities face pressure to keep fuel available, and households eventually feel higher transport costs in the prices of everyday goods. This is not yet a national supply collapse. Russia has a large refining system, can redirect product between regions, can limit exports, and can pressure producers to protect domestic supply. Those measures can absorb one outage. The real question is duration. If Orsk returns quickly and other plants stay online, the damage remains manageable. If several refineries require long repairs at the same time, the costs begin to compound. Longer routes, idle trucks, scarce fuel, and repeated repairs create a persistent drag that administrative price controls cannot fully remove. Ukraine is also presenting a new picture of the battlefield. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says Ukrainian troops have recovered 745 square kilometers this year and regained control of 26 settlements in the Oleksandrivskyi sector. Those are Kyiv's figures, and independent confirmation is still incomplete. Even so, the claim is politically useful because it challenges the idea that Russian movement is only going in one direction. Ukraine does not need these localized gains to decide the war by themselves. It needs them to show that focused operations can still reverse Russian advances and to give its negotiators a measurable achievement rather than a purely defensive story. Russia is likely to answer with a different set of metrics, emphasizing Ukrainian losses, the overall length of the front, and Moscow's greater material depth. That leaves both governments talking about progress in ways that are difficult to compare. The practical indicators will be whether Ukraine can hold the recovered settlements, whether Russia diverts forces to reverse the gains, and whether similar operations appear in other sectors. One successful counterattack is a data point. A repeatable method would be a shift. There is also a new dispute over prisoners of war. Russia published a list of 224 Ukrainian captives it says it is ready to exchange. Ukraine's human rights ombudsman rejected Moscow's presentation and accused Russia of using the names to manipulate families and shift blame for stalled exchanges. The list may still contain information that can support an actual swap. The problem is that publishing it turns a humanitarian process into a public contest before negotiators have resolved the terms. Prisoner exchanges have remained one of the few channels that can still produce concrete results between the two sides. Families can verify names, intermediaries can compare records, and officials can negotiate categories, even while wider diplomacy is frozen. Public accusation makes that work harder, because each side must defend its conduct to a domestic audience. Watch whether the list moves into a closed verification process or whether both governments continue using it mainly as evidence against the other. In Washington, senators are pressing senior officials over a roughly 17-month pause in new sanctions aimed at Russian evasion networks. Existing sanctions remain in force, and enforcement can continue without a major public package. Still, the long gap matters. Russian trading networks change ownership, routes, flags, payment systems, and intermediaries as restrictions evolve. If designations do not keep pace, the deterrent effect weakens because companies learn that adaptation may buy them time. The pause may also be deliberate. The administration could be preserving future sanctions relief as leverage in negotiations. But leverage works only if Moscow believes pressure can increase as well as decrease. If Russia concludes that new restrictions are politically unlikely, the value of a future concession falls. Allies may also become less willing to spend money and political capital on enforcement if they see Washington holding back. Finally, President Vladimir Putin has widened his warning about commercial vessels. He says Russia will respond in kind if Western governments seize Russian merchant ships, and has left open the possibility of acting wherever Moscow considers necessary, including in the Pacific Fleet's area of responsibility. The new element is the geographic breadth. The threat is still conditional and gives no operational plan, but shipping companies have to consider a risk that is no longer confined to familiar European waters. Russian domestic coverage is presenting that warning as a lawful response to piracy. It is also telling audiences that Moscow remains open to talks, that sanctions relief should be part of any settlement, and that Ukraine's grain exports are weakening. That package shifts attention away from refinery disruption and freight inflation. It portrays Russia as patient, wronged, and economically durable, while placing the burden for escalation and compromise on its opponents. The overall picture is a competition over depth. Russia has more territory, capacity, and resources to absorb pressure. Ukraine is trying to make that depth expensive to use by striking energy infrastructure, recovering selected ground, and forcing Moscow to protect more systems at once. The next signals are the Orsk repair timeline, fuel availability outside Orenburg, the durability of Ukraine's territorial gains, movement on the prisoner list, and whether the vessel warning produces real maritime action. Thanks for listening. Keep your maps open, your sources skeptical, and your notifications on. For the written brief, find us at restrictedhandling.substack.com. See you tomorrow.